Okay, I can still remember when the very first Wildscape workshop was in Bel Air. That was the very first location. And we had a hurricane threaten, and I guess it rained on us. We had an outdoor plant sale. So it's amazing. We got shut down by the fire marshal one time because we had too many people in the room. So it's wonderful. This is beautiful to look out on all of y'all. So I have a quick question. How many of you have come here? This is your first time to come. Awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you very much for coming. How many of you have never dabbled in native plants before? Okay, there's a few hands. You're in the right place, right? The rest of us will teach you and encourage you. So when some of my good buddies out there in the audience said, oh, when you get up there, talk about this. When you get up there, talk about that. So I have two announcements that we should have given to Russ. But so Russ has talked about the Houston Bulb and Plant Mart, right? So the dates of that are October 12th and 13th. And Susie Martin and Doris Hurd, will you guys put your hands up, please? Susie's going to be talking about 9 natives, right, that are good for this area and that are good for wildlife. And they have a list of how many? How many species? Yeah. 20 to 24 species. So if you guys, she's got a list there, if you guys are interested to see what natives they'll have there, and they're growing them. So they decided to make a big push at this sale on natives. So they're growing them themselves from Native American seeds. So anyway, very, very cool. So the 12th and 13th of next month. And let's see, Native Plant Society, again, is having their fall field trip to Deer Park Prairie on September 29th. So this flyer and the information will be on the Native Plant Society table out there at the front. If you want some more, they've got a whole list of things they're going to be looking and doing. Okay, now it's my turn. Okay, so I think this is going to tie in with Carol Feldman's talk really, really well. So everybody before me has brought up some really good information, and so now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of things that you can actually plant to attract the wildlife in. So for those of you that are fairly new to this, hopefully this will help a little bit. All the plants on the slides today are in the plant sale. So I made I made sure that they were being sold. So you can take a look at them. Pull out your plant list that's in your packet, and you can make a note next to things. This will at least give you a photo of what they look like when they're blooming, or what they look like when they're, big or small or whatever. Also, I'm going to take a page from our dragonfly speaker, Bob, and I want you to think. You don't have to close your eyes, but you can put your fingers right here. No, I'm kidding. Think about your yard at home and where you might want to plant natives. Think about the sun that you have there or not, shade. Think about how tall you might want things, how short you might want things. And then we'll talk about how to put something in there that will be available each season, okay? So think about your yard as we go through these slides and figure out what you might want. Okay. All right. You've seen a version of this in Carol's slides where we talked about the different layers in a habitat, right? So if you look at the different layers and you look at the different wildlife species, this focuses on birds primarily. Birds, Where is the majority of the bird use in that habitat? So about mid-story down, right? Although the canopy has a few, it's mainly the bottom 2/3 of that habitat that is true habitat for most wildlife species. And this holds true for the bird species. If you think about the ground covers, even the fallen leaves, you know, the leaf litter, that's home to firefly larvae, things like that. So even the ground itself is important. So we'll talk about the different layers that some of these plants could fit into, right, and some of the uses. All right, so here's a picture of layers in the landscape, and she had some really good photos as well. But you can see how you use different, so you'd have a short tree maybe, tall shrub, short tree, depending on the size of your landscape, which could be your canopy layer, essentially. And then you come down from there. This has bare dirt, but in my garden, I let the leaves stay. So they're a lot of times they're crushed up and they make kind of a mulch, but lots of good options. So let's talk about some of the seasons and uses when you're talking about wildlife. Landscape uses, Carol covered those pretty well. So lots of different things you can use native plants for. So rain gardens, I'm put kind of as Mark Klim used to say, if you know him, a preponderance of plants, a big Canadian word, I think, right? I put a large amount of plants that can handle wet roots because we've had so much rain lately, the last couple of years. So rain gardens are going to become, I think, a bigger thing than they are now. Wetlands and ponds, bogs, things like that. Pocket prairies or a little prairie area. Pollinator habitats, butterflies, things like that. Songbird habitats and school habitats. So those are kind of the uses that I thought of just briefly, and we'll talk about the plants that will do well for those. Did you have a question? No, okay. And then layers, we talked about that with the different canopy layers, right? Seasonal uses, one thing that you need to keep in mind is if you've got pollinators that are using your yard, you want to have things available for them all through the year. So spring, summer, fall, and if you can find plants that will bloom in the wintertime, do that. But primarily the 3 seasons that you know those little insects will be active. And then the last, the food sources, lots of different things your plants can provide. So nectar, pollen, seeds, berries, fruit, insect sources, right? Because there's a lot of animals that don't eat the basic plant, but they eat the insects that come to that plant. So if you have insects in your habitat, woohoo, good job, right? And then nesting material, just items from that plant that are used by the animals. So lots of uses, so think about that when you're thinking about those spaces in your yard and you need to fill them up with native plants. All right, so the first one on your list, and we're doing it by alphabetical order by the genus species name. So the first one is red buckeye, and this is one of my favorite plants. It's so pretty. Look at the blooms. I mean, how could you not love that? The only problem is that the seeds and the young shoots are poisonous. So if you have small children, you don't want this in your yard, unfortunately. But if you don't, please plant it. It's beautiful. So this plant blooms March to May, and it can handle kind of that understory edge of a forest kind of location. It's going to bloom, it'll shoot up and bloom, and then in the middle of the summer, you think, oh my gosh, I've killed this plant. Because it turns brown, it kind of goes down, and you think, what happened? That's normal. It goes dormant. So in the hottest part of the weather, it says, I'm done. And it just goes dormant, and then next year it starts all over again. So it's really kind of a neat plant. We have ours at the office planted as an understory shrub, and it gets a little bit over my height, and that's normal, and then it dies back down. So lots of hummingbirds are all over this plant. So you can see it's good for a part sun garden if you need a spot like that. Understory, summer nectar, especially for hummingbirds. The seeds are eaten by squirrels and probably some other mammals, and it's a really good one for hummingbirds. The next one is false indigo. Look at that bloom. Isn't that beautiful? So it's got purple, dark purple, and kind of, it looks like a velvet painting, you know, purples and golds. It's a host plant for several butterfly species. So they're going to be eating the leaves. So don't be surprised if you see things chewing on the leaves, right? That's good. You're bringing in the insects, and then there might be something else that eats those insects, but especially the caterpillars. Gets 6 to 10 feet high, so not very huge. Kind of an airy shrub. It's really pretty. Blooms April through June, and you can use it as part of an understory layer. It likes wet soil. Hey, great, we have lots of that here. So it's good in a rain garden, on the edge of a pond, anything like that. And it's really, really good for native bees and butterflies. The next one is Eastern Bluestar. And I have to admit, I wasn't as familiar with this one. So I looked up some information about it for you. It's small, so 1 to 3 feet, right? And I would assume that it probably doesn't get to that 3 feet except, you know, occasionally, right? It's dormant in the wintertime, blooms March to May, and it likes wet to moist soils. So you could use it in a part sun garden, an understory layer. You could use it in wet soils or a rain garden or a pond or bog. And it also provides summer nectar. Okay, so we've talked probably several times now about milkweeds. And you guys know how important those are for the monarch butterflies. But they're also important for lots of other species as well. Lots of things use milkweed plants. One of the handouts, I think, in your, did I put it in there? Maybe not. I forgot to Xerox it, I guess. There is if you look online, there's a handout that talks about how important milkweeds are to lots and lots of other insect species. So this one's nice because it likes wet feet. Gets 18 to 24 inches high, and it's really easy to grow compared to some of the other milkweeds. Blooms May to September, so it's blooming up till now. Which is really nice because when are the monarchs coming through? Like right about now, right? It would also provide nectar for things that are also moving through about now. So think about those migratory species. Has opposite leaves and the milky sap that milkweeds have. So you could use it for lots of different things. One of the things that's very nice is the rain gardens. So it'd be a beautiful addition to a rain garden or a pond or a bog. Another one is the American beautyberry. And this one's fairly common. You see it berrying, is that a word? Berrying? Producing berries right now. So if you've gone out, look along the edge of a woods or go out on a walk along a trail, you'll see American beautyberry producing these bright purpley pink berries. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I know in my yard, the cardinals wait for it. So they'll sit and you can see them come, send one of them over. Okay, test it now. And they'll eat it. Nope, not ready yet. And then they'll wait, you can see them kind of pacing. And eventually you go back out and it's completely stripped of berries because it's great now, you know, it's time. So beautiful, beautiful shrub. And it's producing the berries now. It blooms May to July, and then now is when they produce these berries. Has opposite leaves, and if you have deer in your area, just a warning, deer like it too. So through the winter time is when the deer use it. And so when the deer are scrapping, looking for anything that's available to eat, they'll come and eat the twigs. So they're eating the twig part. So it'd be great in an understory situation, forest edge. It's great bird habitat. Let's see. So you could use it for lots of different things. I've seen it growing in the sun as well, but I think it likes that edge. So the next one that gets very little notice sometimes is Cherokee Sedge. And I bring this one up because it's a great ground cover in places that have a lot of shade and that have wet soils or moist soils. So this one can handle all that kind of condition, which we have right now in a lot of our gardens. So it's evergreen, so it's green even through the wintertime. It grows in clumps, kind of like little grasses everywhere. Blooms April through June, little greenish white flowers. So it's not super noticeable, but it definitely covers the ground so that it's a pretty addition. So it's good for a part sun garden or a part shade, I guess you could say. Ground cover, understory, and moist soil. Let's see, so buttonbush, another one of my favorites. So this one grows 6 to 12 feet high, so a little over my height. It's perennial, and it is deciduous, so the leaves are gonna drop and you'll just get these, you know, brown branches. It blooms, these beautiful blooms, June through September. And I have to say, watching our bush at the office, it was amazing because you'd see all these insects just going by. And you're like, where are you heading, right? I notice weird stuff like that. And they're heading to the buttonbush. And so they're all landing on the buttonbush. So we were seeing all kinds of caterpillars, moth species, and butterfly species, all these beetles and bugs and things like that that were all using the buttonbush, especially when it's blooming. And it smells really, really nice. It's got a sweet fragrance. It almost like honey. It smells like honey is what it smells like. So this is a good bush for wet feet as well. Doesn't mind having its feet wet. Sun to part sun garden. Let's see, nectar in the summertime. It's a larval host plant for a bunch of different things. It's got a little brown seeds. And waterfowl, if you're close enough to a lake or something, that's the biologist in me. They'll eat those seeds, but also other birds will eat them as well. Let's see, Lanceleaf Coreopsis. It gets about 1 foot high, which is great for a garden that the HOA might be looking at, right? Beautiful, beautiful little flower. April through June, so it's kind of that spring bloom. Lots of different sunlight and a variety of soils. And this is a really good one for school habitats. So if you're looking for something that's hardy that will come back each year, this is a really good one for you. It's good for a border, a ground cover, spring and summer nectar, especially for the native bees. Next one is parsley hawthorn, 10 to 15 feet high, which is really small for a small tree, right? I like it. It's beautiful in a landscape. And if you look at the leaves, they look a little bit like a parsley leaf, right? That's where it gets the name. Beautiful flowers. Those flowers are one of the first nectar sources for butterflies and native bees in the spring. So it's blooming when not much else is blooming. So it blooms early in March, And then the red fruits start ripening now. And they're available through the winter time, so it's a winter food for your bird species. It is deciduous, so those leaves do fall, but I think it's the prettiest tree in the wintertime because it has kind of a white bark, grayish white, and so you see this grayish white bark and then the red berries all over the tree, so it's really, really pretty. And it is a larval host plant for several species. So this is our version of the purple coneflower. And if you notice, it's a little different than the ones you see a lot of times in the nursery, in that this is our true native, and the leaves kind of droop a bit, but I think they're no less pretty, right? This is a host plant for several species. It is a spring and summer nectar source, and the seeds, that little seed head in the center, is full of seeds that are eaten by birds. So if you like goldfinches, things like that, in the wintertime, they're eating this plant. They're eating the seeds from this plant. So I don't know. I like it. It's a pretty little thing. This one gets overlooked a lot. This is Purple Lovegrass, 8 to 24 inches high. And there's some good examples of it back in the plant sale. It's a perennial grass, and it blooms August through October. So right now, and you can see what the blooms look like back there on the plants. It tolerates poor soils, needs some well-drained sites though. Very drought tolerant, and it does spread a little bit, but it's really good like on a border, along a sidewalk or something, or underneath trees or something. Full sun, ground cover, good edging plant, prairie garden, bird habitat, fall and winter seeds. I like the purple though. Rattlesnake master, you've heard us talk about this one before if you've been here before. Host plant to a lot of different insects. Summer nectar, and just the most amazing looking plant, right? You can't compare this to anything else. Well-drained soils, although they can be poor, they don't need a bunch of fertilizer. It's normally found in a prairie setting, but you can plant it in your garden. Blooms June through August with these kind of greenish white flowers. So this one could not be any easier to grow. So if you are brand new to the native plants, try this one first. You can't really get rid of it. I mean, not in a bad way. I mean that it's just very, very easy. You can grow it from seed. You can grow it from a potted plant. If you've ever been down to Galveston and you've seen them mowing the medians in Galveston and it's bone dry, and you'll see this little plant flowering, and it's only this tall because they've mowed it so much, and it's still surviving, still coming back. So this is one of our true wildflowers, but it grows really well in a garden. So full sun, it does need that. It's good for a pollinator habitat, prairie garden, bird habitat, and school habitat. And this is one that kids can grow in pots, in containers, or scatter seeds, and they grow. So it's kind of fun. Summer nectar, and then those seed heads in the center, once they ripen, become bird food. So don't cut them off too soon. Or if you do trim off the dead heads, right, lay them down right next to it so the birds can still eat the seeds. Okay, these are I guess it's just one, sorry. Hairy sunflower and rough sunflower. I've seen both names for this one. This is one of our native sunflowers, and it gets 12 to 18 inches high, which is like the perfect size in a garden. Blooms August through November, so it's another fall bloomer right now. Can handle dry soils, full sun, and it's good for prairie habitat, pollinator habitat, bird habitat, school habitat. Pretty easy to grow. And nectar and seeds, again, for wildlife. Spider lily, how many of you have this one? This is kind of an old-timey plant, like an heirloom plant. Lots of folks have it. If you don't have it, give it a shot. 1 to 3 feet high. I've never seen it get quite 3 feet. You know, usually ours is lower, but it's loving this weather right now, just blooming its little heart out. Very fragrant. Again, this one smells kind of like honey sometimes. It can handle standing in water. So if you've got a spot that every time it rains, water puddles right there, and you need something to grow in it, this might be an option. The leaves are really pretty. Looks like a, you know, kind of a lily, right? Hence the name. And it's great for pollinators and night gardens. So it's still white, a white flower at night. So it's good for moth gardens if you're interested in that. Possum haw or deciduous holly. Small tree, again, deciduous. And it has tiny little green leaves and then tiny white flowers on the female tree. And then that female tree produces berries, from little red berries from being pollinated. So in the fall, right now, it's starting to produce its small little berries. The leaves drop in the fall, and it has white bark again. Let's see, part sun, understory, pollinator garden, bird habitat. This is another one that has winter berries, spring nectar, and fall and winter fruit. So we have 2 species here. These are the liatris, or blazing stars. And there's 2 species on the list. I had to split them apart because they get different heights. So one's 1 to 3 foot high, one is 10 to 30 inches. The bracteata is a little bit rarer, and you hardly ever see it in the sales. So both of these you don't see very often in the sales. They bloom at different times, but primarily summer into fall. So this is a nectar source, especially for butterflies and all kinds of insects in the fall when they really, really need that food source. So summer nectar, also into fall. Fall and winter seeds. Goldfinches like to eat this in the wintertime when they come down. Host plant for several different species of pollinators. It's good for a pocket prairie, pollinator habitat, bird habitat, school habitat. And the one thing they mentioned to me yesterday to make sure I said, if you want to grow this one, pick up a packet of the fertilizer that's back there with the mycorrhizae in it, because this plant really needs that to grow past 1 year. So if you get this and don't use it, then it'll just grow for a while and then you might lose it. But you need that fungi in the soil to keep it going. All right, this one changed its name. Actually, it didn't change it, somebody else changed it for it, right? So this isn't now in the family or the genus with evening primrose, the little pink buttercup flower, you know? I call them buttercups growing up, but so this one used to be Gaura lindheimeri. So that's why it gets the name Butterfly Gaura. 2 to 5 foot high, perennial, blooms April through July with white to pink flowers. Really, really, really pretty. It's usually in a prairie setting, any kind of soil, and you can see it's good for lots of different things. Pollinators really appreciate it, so lots of bees and butterflies. Gulf Coast Penstemon, another favorite. This one's small. It would be good for understory or a ground cover on the edge. It can handle some shade. And it'll bloom twice sometimes. So you might get it blooming in spring and then again in the fall. Kind of has a purplish blue flower, almost pinkish purple blue, you know, that color scheme. And it's really, really easy to grow. Another one of those that's good. And it can provide lots of different uses, especially nectar. Red bay, The reason I brought this one up is because we're losing a lot of our red bays due to this little bitty beetle up here called the red bay ambrosia beetle. And it eats the tree and brings in a fungus that is spreading to the trees and killing them. So even our trees in East Texas are starting to die from this thing. So if you have a spot that you can plant a red bay, hey, you might be helping the population out, right? We might lose them elsewhere, but maybe we'll still have them here. It's a great tree. It does get a little bit tall, but I think that's a long time period before it gets to that big. It is evergreen, and the leaves are very fragrant, and they use them in gumbos and soups and things like that. If you've ever used bay leaf. So it has fruit in the late summer, and that's what birds are after, and it can handle moist soils. So it's a larval host plant for several different swallowtail species, but primarily the Palamedes. Salt marsh fleabane. This one, when I first started learning native plants, this one is like a wildflower. I mean, it's just a trash weed, right? But look at how pretty it is. So 2 to 4 feet high, perennial, blooms July through October, so right now when things need nectar. Lots of different varieties of sun, and it has a scent to the leaves. If you crush them, they smell kind of like, I don't know, not really, it's like camphophenique. You guys familiar with that? You know? Camphor, right? So kind of that spicy scent. Good for pollinator habitats, rain gardens, bogs, ponds, likes wet feet, and then nectar for native bees and pollinators. Slender mountain mint is another one that it's brand new to me, but it's a wonderful plant, my gosh. 2 to 4 foot high, blooms right now, June through September, and sun to part shade. It is awesome for a pollinator garden. This is one we find in our local prairies, so it's a really, really nice plant. Summer and fall nectar for most of our little pollinators. Rough leaf coneflower and Texas coneflower. So the rough leaf coneflower is on the right. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what direction would it be for you? So rough leaf is on the right, Texas coneflower is on the left. And so they have a different kind of cone, right? One is rounded and one looks like a cone head thing. So approximately 3 to 5 foot high. This would be awesome in a pocket prairie or in a back corner of your garden bed where it can get tall. It's really attractive to our native bees and butterflies and things like that. So it'd be a great addition to a school habitat or a pollinator garden, things like that. Very easy to grow as well. No, it might. You never know. Might come with a frog. Yeah. That one might find it quickly though, right? Little Bluestem, most people overlook the grasses. So we've got Gulf Muley in the back, and we also have Little Bluestem. And the thing that I love about this grass is the beautiful color. And so just about any season of the year, it's turning a different color. So this blue color, right now, the blue stems are, if they've been mowed, they're coming up and they're like a grayish blue, the prettiest thing. If they've been up for a while and they haven't been mowed, then they get this kind of pinkish purpley color. And then they go to seed and they have a white, or go to flower, I guess you'd call it. And they have a white flower. Then it turns to a seed. And then it turns kind of a copper color. It's just a beautiful plant. And it's very well used by wildlife. And so they're using it for host plants and also nesting material. Seeds in the wintertime. This one I am not familiar with, but if you look over there, there's one I saw yesterday that's actually blooming. Such a pretty plant. I wasn't familiar with it, but wow, am I going to try and add this one to my garden. It has a basal rosette through the wintertime, which means it's a little clump, right? And I noticed over there right now, it kind of looks like that basal rosette in some of the pots. So don't be put off by that, because it will grow up and you will get the beautiful bloom stalks. It's good for fall nectar, for pollinators and hummingbirds that are coming through. So don't overlook this little plant because it might not have a great big bloom on it right now. Seaside goldenrod. I think some people kind of shudder when you say goldenrod. I want to actually plant goldenrod in my yard. This one doesn't get too high, 3 to 6 feet. It's actually pretty well behaved for a goldenrod. If you have a spot that you can plant this, I would encourage you to. Because, oh my gosh, every time I've looked at one goldenrod plant, it's just covered in different kinds of insects that are using it. So there are moth species that only use this plant, right? They're using it as a larval host plant. Lots and lots and lots of pollinators are using this for nectar, especially in the fall when they really need it. And it smells sweet. So almost again like that honey scent, I guess because it's so full of nectar. So if you've got a spot for this one, I would encourage you to try it. And our last plant, okay, don't get ready to run yet. Our last plant is Missouri Ironweed. And this one, I love the bloom on it. It's in the aster family, and it can handle wet soils again, other soils too, but wet. And it's really good for summer nectar, summer seeds, fall seeds. It's a huge nectar source for pollinators. So if you've got a spot for this one where you can handle it being a little bit tall, go for this one too. It's a really good plant.